so much for coming to Brandywine Workshop and Archives. I'm Michelle Parchment, Executive Director here at Brandywine. This evening is a very special conversation. We are very proud to say that this is our pilot program of our Anatsui Fellowship African-based artists residency. And these wonderful artists have been with us for 1 full month. They'll be leaving soon, but not forgotten because we also have your artwork. So at this time, I would like everyone to please introduce yourself and please tell everyone where you're from.
Hello. Okay. My name is Vitjitua Ndjiharine. I'm a visual artist from Namibia. I come from a background of painting and collaging, and also working with historical narratives, archival photographs, historical documents. I started doing this work a couple of years ago, just in sort of trying to understand myself and my identity and how that is something that is constructed based on sort of what historical narratives that we're told about ourselves. And coming from Namibia is a country that has sort of layered with a lot of different histories, from German colonialism to apartheid, via colonization, via South Africa, and then also via Britain. So all of these different layers that have kind of shaped how we have constructed and reconstructed ourselves as a country in Namibia in post-independence times. And we received our independence in 1990, which is relatively recent compared to a lot of other countries. So that decolonization process has I don't know, I feel like we've sort of moving into this wave of like decolonization in like recent times. A lot of artists on the ground have been sort of trying to figure out this topic as far as like, what does that mean? And so I started to just kind of deal with these topics in my own sort of family history, my personal family history. That also is, a very intricate sort of story there. And I just started to explore that through art. And then one of the other themes that I also then started to come across a lot is knowledge production, again, relating back to history, like how we are taught history and how that relates to today. And lastly, a lot of topics related to restitutions, because restitution, particularly restitution of cultural objects, because this is a thing now that's happening within European museums, where there is a huge conversation about returning of certain objects back to African countries. And this has also come up a lot within the Namibian context, and it has also come up for me within the personal context with family objects that belong to my family that were taken in the mid-1800s and are in a Swiss museum today. So this has been kind of a very sort of interesting, like, personal topic for me also. So this and themes like this is what I explore in my work.
Thank you.
Hello everyone. My name is Alexandre Kyungu Mwilambwe. I'm from DRC, Republic of Congo. And then actually I'm very pleased to come with you and then to talk about my art and my work. I study in Kinshasa Academy of the Beaux-Arts de Kinshasa. And then my work, I construct my work around about the question about migration and mobility space. And then most of my work is talking about the movement of people. And then I use a scarification and cartography. Why scarification and why cartography? Because my first question when I starting to work with this artwork, my first question is to know about my identity, and then also is one of the question back all the time for me is if the question about colonization not existed in Africa, what is the reality of actually map and reality of space? And then also, if the Berlin Conference not existed, what is reality, the context of space and the context of boundary in Africa? And then why I starting now to know about my country? And then one of the important also question when I observe my country, and then if I feel some bad when I see the media social or TV or the reality I have in my society. When I constate Congo, I have a lot of conflict and space. And then one of the questions I want to know is if the problem of land is the cartography or the problem of Congo is the cartography. And then I want also to know, to make some parallelism element, to know about my identity, because when I studied to Academy of Art in Kinshasa, we studying to European history and some America, some Europe, but I feel like I don't know about my identity, my personality. And then I want to know this reality, and then I'm looking for in my background, I see scarification. Scarification, one of element is to similarity as like cartography. Cartography allow people to know about the space and localization somehow, some people, and allowing people to know about the border. And then also scarification in my country. I have a lot of story inside, but one of the story I get in my work is how scarification want to talk about the space and identify space, also people, and build the space in Africa. And then now I want to make to confront the both reality and to interrogate this question about mobility for African people, you know, in the world. And then also the question about political migration. Yeah, that is my work. And then the question very interesting is how I love also to use some, how I like to use some material in my work. The first one is the door. The door, when I starting, I want to make the parallelism and also the metaphor of life. We know each moment we use each door. We go to the office, we go some house, and then for me is very interesting. We can't stay one place and to be take good. You need to go, you need to moving. Why I interpret now the door and making the map and the scarification, grabbing the scarification and the door. And then, yeah, that is a few presentation of my personality, and then the question why I want to work, and then why I want to talk about this question.
So, Jose, will you be so kind to let the audience know who you are? And also, everyone needs to know that Jose was one of the review panelists who selected these two artists to be with us today. So, and go ahead, Jose.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me and inviting me tonight. It's a great pleasure And also, I want to congratulate you, both of you, for being part of this inaugural fellowship, the Anatsui Fellowship. And also, Michelle, congratulations to you too for joining the Brandywine family. Like Michelle said, I was one of the panelists for this edition of the Anatsui Fellowship. And, you know, it was a great pleasure, a great honor to look at all of the work and particularly look at both of your work. I'm also an artist here based in Philadelphia, and every so often also a curator. But I'm really happy to be here tonight. We're going to begin asking some questions and digging a little bit more into all of that rich information you have given us. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to, you know, dig in your work, explore, and learn from. So this is a great opportunity for doing that. But I think you probably have one first question.
There's something that I think the audience need to understand is that this would not have happened if it was not for El Anatsui. He was very generous in donating one of his sculptures to Brandywine, which was then auctioned off at Sotheby's, London, for $1.26 million. And that $1.26 million all came to Brandywine for this wonderful fellowship to be established. So we have an endowment for this fellowship, so it's sustainable. So this is our pilot program. And also what everyone needs to know is that we had our first time out, 87 applicants from 34 African nations that applied. I feel sorry for you that you had to go through all of that, Jose. But it was enjoyable. So we're very happy to have both of them with us. And so, Jose, go ahead, dig deep.
Perfect. Let's get there. And first of all, I want to say it was a beautiful process. It was a beautiful panel. We enjoyed it. It was a great amount of listening and great amount of discussion. Of course, it had to happen. There's a lot of richness in the process. But I want to first start asking you, and I'm going to go a little bit off script, but you were sharing this beautiful and amazing information. A lot of it has to do with political realities of both your countries, right? The DRC and Namibia. How, boundaries, how geographies have been constantly shifting, how culture, how government has been, and politics have been shifting, right, from apartheid, for instance, in Namibia to being independent in 1990. The DRC, right, has been colonized, has been shifting. In the 60s, there was a lot of change. How do you see your work as artists going against that narrative of colonialism? How do you see that manifesting? And also, is there a pushback, right, in that process of you creating work that to some extent is questioning many of the ways that such, system has been implemented, informed by colonialism? How do you see your work pushing against that? And is there a pushback? Vitjitua, if you want to.
Maybe I can just give one example of what happened when I started working in the archive of a museum in Hamburg, in Germany, and they had about over 1,000 photographs that were taken during the colonial period in Namibia, and also during the colonial genocide, because there was also a genocide that happened during this time. And one of the things, there were, first of all, a lot of, for example, naked pictures of Black women in these archives, right? And a lot of these photographs were taken for various purposes and exported, to different science, but also entertainment, So they went to all of these different purposes. And that was sort of the image that was exported of Black women in the European context, right? So for people who hadn't even left Europe, this is sort of the image that they would see of what's happening over there in the colonies. And so one of the things that I did was to kind of redress these images with like these paper cutout, collaging, like sort of makeshift dresses onto these images. And the pushback that I got here is that I was distorting history. And also, ironically, I got this from people in Namibia, you know, because they were like, we want to see like the real image and not this like distortion that you are like creating. And so that was kind of an interesting debate that we had, you know, about like what types of photographs do you show, how can you reclaim these bodies, you know, that are just lost and trapped in the archive and that have been exploited, you know, and are still being exploited today, even in the ways that they are sort of left in the archive without being recontextualized, you know. But then once I started to tell how in some cases you would see, like, let's say a picture of a woman who is like dressed, then the following picture would be of her getting undressed, and then the last picture would be like of her naked, but then these other two are like excluded, and that's the image that gets exported is like of a naked person. So once I started to sort of explain that to people, it started to sort of become clear, you know, that, okay, maybe we do need to look at how, you know, images are produced and like what they mean and all of that. So, I mean, yeah, that's just like kind of one sort of example. And for me, that helped me to also kind of want to be able to see these women as like human. And, you know, instead of having that distance, because this is what happens with history. It's like something that's sort of far away, it's not related to us, but at the same time, it is, you know, and so how can we see ourselves in that history? And particularly for us, like people of color, how can we sort of reclaim those identities that have been changed?
So Vichy, would you say, these images, are they taught in the history in Namibia? Your pushback was the pushback coming from people in the art field, or it's just conversation?
No, people from the communities.
From the
community.
community.
So a lot of
Okay.
Herero people who these pictures were of, like Herero and Nama people who were affected during the genocide. So they, you know, would say, you know, that I'm distorting history and I'm not, you know, I'm not telling the truth or something. But rather, it was like the image is not the one that's not telling the truth. And so it was important to kind of help them understand that, if that makes sense. But also in a way that we were kind of having a dialogue, because with this story, it's very interesting because it's a genocide that has also been denied. You know, so
Yes.
from their perspective, I can also understand, because they're like, we have been told that this is not real and that we are just, you know, making things up, and we're, you know, so for us, we need to be able to see, for us to know what we have been feeling all along, you know. So on one hand, I can also understand from that perspective. And so there is, you know, perhaps like sometimes, you know, a disconnect between what communities on the ground in Africa think that should be how they are represented versus how they're represented. And sometimes the thing that you think like, oh, it's obvious, you won't want to see an image of your ancestor who is being violated or whatever. Right. But in some cases, people will be like, no, we want to see that because it's the first time that we're ever seeing it. You know, and again, because of the nature of like how these images were taken and circulated, you know, they were never meant for the photographic subjects to see or to even have any control over, you know. So yeah, so they just, these photos were exported, they went to Europe, and that's where they stayed, and the people on the ground never even saw what that picture even is, And so for people today, they're like, no, we want to see, And so then it just becomes a conversation of like, okay, how do you facilitate this without necessarily continuing to perpetuate the violence,
Right.
Yeah.
And it is surprising always, right, how people sometimes are more concerned about the ethics of revisiting history, but not the ethics that were violated at the time that such atrocities were made.
True. Because we also deal with that here in America.
Yeah, I mean, in the world history, right, what is happening right now in Gaza.
So, Alexandre.
Second question?
I segue a little bit, but I wanted to ask you a little bit about how do you see, for instance, mixing a little bit the work that you're doing, right? How is mixing the scarification with geography? And how?
Especially talking about colonialism.
Yeah, exactly. How is that? How do you see also that pushing? But tell us a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay. I think that is why the reason I build this question about the reality of border and in space. I interesting a lot about the question about relation between people. And when I want to starting this question is to know about the reality of space. The question about the other people, and then the people can share the same space. And then I think for me is very important when I use the scarification and geography, because for me geography is one of the elements connecting the people. And I want now to erase the boundary we build in the mind, because I said if the cartography beginning one of aspects to separating the people, I think the role of cartography is to build the people. And then I'm background in my culture, my identity. When I see the scarification, all the year the people making and then use that to making the reference, and then it's also one of the elements allow people to move in the space and to make the acknowledge for another people. And then for me, when I make in connection is to introduce and also to interrogate the people. We are build the map, we are build the space, and then we give the not possibility for other people. I'm from Africa, and then a question of mobility. We have so many difficulty, and also I'm some place, And then when I introduce the scarification, for me is one of the elements allow me to interrogate and to redefine the question about space and border. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Going back to Vitjitua, I've noticed you have a very intricate interplay in your work, right? There are various mediums, historical facts, historical artifacts, cultural conflicts. They remind me of collage, which is actually a medium that you often use a lot. Could you elaborate on why these elements hold such significance in your artistic practice, right? Even thinking about the work that you have been producing here at Brandywine, right? There's a lot of layering, but it's not from a single thing, right? It is from research, like you said, that you have been doing, from artifacts that you find, from documents that you integrate. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I think I've just kind of come to sort of understand that, like, when you put something next to another thing, that sort of maybe will change how you view, these things, or how you maybe can equate, and that's why I love collaging, because it's exactly that. It's just juxtaposing all of these different things, and cutting and pasting. Again, going back to this project with the photographs, that, just kind of cutting the photographed person out of that context, for me, was just kind of like removing them from that context and placing them in something else. So I really just kind of like to play with that. There was also another work that I did, and this was using textile pieces from an archive in Switzerland, and looking at these because Switzerland has a very interesting history with like the silk industry and the silk ribbon industry and all of that. So looking at those traditions of textile making in Europe, and then juxtaposing that with traditions of object making in Namibia, just to be able to the most obvious thing is just to put them on an equal plane and say these things are all worth preserving, they're all worth, and it's all sort of indicative of human ingenuity and creativity, that deserves to be celebrated no matter what, no matter where it's from. And again, it's just that, it's just cutting and pasting, adding new context or putting things in new context. I think for me, that is really important. And then another thing that I also wanted to add, because I know you sent me this question earlier and I had a completely different answer in mind, which is also kind of related to this, but I think when you're talking about history, when I'm talking about the Herero people, these are also the people that I come from, So sometimes I say they, but I'm like, oh, but it's also my, my culture. And we have a culture, one of making textile from patchwork, just because of the fact that during the colonial period, when people, went from wearing leather to then wearing cloth, and European style dresses and all of that, sometimes women would not have enough textile to make a full dress, and so they would patch different things together. And just aesthetically for me, this is so beautiful. And so so that's just another inspiration from just taking from the culture that I come from and celebrating the culture that I come from.
So can you please tell us, since being here, talking about, archival information, how you incorporate it into your work, same with you. How has that experience been being here in Philadelphia? What is it, in 2025, 2026, 50 years of Philadelphia being a city and all that other good stuff. So, but being here in Philadelphia, how has that affected, in any way, has it affected your work and how you see things?
Yes, I think it's very important for me, also interesting when I come here. Before, I don't have some idea to work in printmaking, and then my work, I use the graving, and I make the incision on the wood and also the rubber. But my big challenge when I come here is to know and to learning about this practice, and then after also to learning or before is for me also to including to make the link about my work, and then taking one of the material I use in my work to including in process of making prints. And when we starting to make some composition, I think the good experience for me is when I thinking to including the rubber. The rubber is one of the elements I use in my work. I use in my work because I want to So inside of my work is one of the support, the medium, want to talk about the migration and mobility space, because when I want to arrive here, I use the car, I'm taking the flight to arrive here. I think each people using this material, and then I make some metaphor to talk this aspect of element, and then it's also one of elements talk about, it's bad story about my country, Congo, during the period of Kingdom Leopold, and then I use these elements also because each rubber, we don't produce in Congo rubber, but you can see when I collect this material, you can see each name from to China, Indiana, and then for me is like one of element, one of thing the material can be taking easy to moving and to cross the border, but the people have many difficult. And then I want now to including in process of making print making, and then when I including to make rubber and wood, and to take the texture about rubber and combine also the physical elements and paper, because when I come here I see the print is like wood, is like we need to make some laser wood, and then I want to, because inside of my work I interrogate also the question about limitation and medium. I'm an artist, and then I'm not artist for just painting and drawing, but I can combine many things and many options to make some idea. And also one of the important when I want to use this element is also to allow me to connect my because the scarification is one of elements is very fragile, and it's also scar and print of a body. And then I want also like to make the print of rubber, because rubber I have more information from the different space where it's from. And for me, it's like I stamp each story where the rubber from, and then I make some story in my universe work. That is the good experience and experience for here. I think for me, it gives me again one of option to build a new body of my work. Before I don't have this idea to make this art, and then I can say is one benefit for me. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Vishi, how has your experience been since coming to Philadelphia?
It's been great. You know, it's been quite a busy month as well of producing, and then also taking some trips, like some day trips and excursions. Which I'm looking forward to going to New York on Saturday. That's gonna be fun. I really wanted to kind of shift the direction a little bit in my work. I mean, just thinking about Philadelphia and being in Philadelphia, for me, I was like, how can I situate the work that I do in this space? And then I did a little bit of sort of digging. I mean, this was mostly online on like the Library of Congress website, and just sort of looking at some things that are related to Philadelphia. Because I just think it's also like a very interesting city. Just historically, there's so much history in the city. And it is also kind of at the core of like what it is to be American, you know, because of like the history with the American Revolution and the Declaration of Independence that was signed here. And then also all the stuff before, I think, and I haven't had like a lot of time, unfortunately, to like dig into that as well, as far as like, you know, the history like along the Delaware River and all the different communities that lived here. But I just thought, like, even just looking at this city alone, there's so many different things that one can draw from if you are into history. There's so many, like, different things that I can look at. So that's just kind of what I did a little bit. And then I also wanted to bring in, again, that sort of question of, like, okay, what does it mean to be American? Who can claim, you know, this American identity? And again, bringing in a little bit of that like biographical sort of information for myself because of like the history of apartheid in Namibia. My parents immigrated here in the 80s, and then I was born here. But like, I never really felt that I could ever call myself an American because one, I didn't grow up here, and there wasn't a way for me to really relate to, you know, what it is to be American. And then over the years, I kind of have, as I've traveled to like different places and also have met like Americans who are living abroad in other places and all of that, it sort of started to open up my mind about like what it is to be an American. And yeah, it's sort of, so I don't know, my story also somehow feels like it's part of that American experience, particularly if you're thinking of like the construction of American identity as this country of immigrants and, you know, this kind of narrative. So I wanted to bring in a little bit of that in the work that I did here, and then also layer in some history of like Philadelphia itself as well.
I also know that both of you have been really busy in the last couple of years and doing a lot of work. Can you tell us a little bit about, you know, current projects that you're working? What is next on your, you know, careers? What are you working towards? This is a great experience, but also, you know, what else has been happening besides the fellowship? Alexandra, can you tell us a little bit about that? Sorry, you were taking that break and I jumped. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit of what else is happening in your career? You know, what are other projects that you're currently working on? Yeah.
Okay.
I know you were showing me some of the really big installations and cutouts that you're working, so really interested in that. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about those?
I was been to in Italy and Biennale de Venice Architecture. And then I was participating in the project in museum, Capesaro Museum. And then I loved the experience in Venice because I introduced and then I add new idea inside of my work, because the last moment my work I use just the rubber and then door. And then I'm making again to introduce the light inside of my work. I use the light because I want to making the shadow inside of my work. The shadow inside of my work is a metaphor to talk about the ephemeral and the fragility of a space, of land, also of a relationship we have in space. And then inside of an installation is when people cross in my installation, the people can taking some scarification and the line of cartography, and then all space can get the shadow of map. Because for me the question about geography, cartography is very important, because I think is the problem, is the first reason the people can talking about meet, about discovery, about connecting. And then I use the showroom to make some experience and then to make some interactive installation. Interactive installation, because for me is also allow me to be connected with another people. And yeah, that is another experience I can talk now, yeah.
Okay, so I've been privy to see some of the work that you created here at Brandywine.
Yes.
And you talk about light and shadow.
Yeah.
How has that helped you in understanding the printmaking process in utilizing your idea of light and shadow?
Okay, yeah. I starting to work in rubber, because rubber can get me the line of shadow, and then I think is very metaphor. When I use the material, is the metaphor to address some message for people, and then the shadow for me is a very fragile. Is a very fragile in light, you know, and then it's also to some make the scarification is very fragile and intimate of people, you know, of you, of me, and then I including inside of my work, because I like this process, and then I want to including a new challenge about my practice here.
Yes, it's very interesting to see the whole process from the beginning, how you utilize the rubber.
Okay,
You utilize the rubber and actually doing the scarification inside the rubber to create this palette on top of the wood. So y'all both had the opportunity to work with master printmakers here, which is wonderful. So will you be able to, what you've learned here through the printmaking process, will you be able to utilize this when you go back home? Will you be able, are you going to utilize it?
Yes, definitely. I think I have a newfound appreciation for printmaking, and it's also been great to work with somebody like Gustavo, for example, because he really is passionate about printmaking, you know, and so that is like just inspiring in itself, you know, and so there's, and also to think like there's so many ways and so many different approaches that you can take. And so, yeah, so that just opens up like possibilities for me, as far as like, it's like having another skill set, you know, in your toolbox. Like, why not just, you know, take it and go with it? So, yeah.
So I would like to open up the audience. Does anyone have any questions? And do we have any questions on the chat?
Well, before we get to the chat, Vichy didn't get a chance to share, you know, what projects she's working on right now and what's coming up for you. But could you repeat the questions from the audience into the mic for the people on virtually, please?
That was you. You had the question.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, can we repeat?
Yes. You had the
question.
question.
The question about
the question of, you know, where you are now, and you're moving forward. What other things are you working on? What do you perceive happening in the future, or what's presently happening for you?
So I have at the moment, so the other thing that I also forgot to mention is that I also work as a, waiting for the card to go. So I also do performance, so I also perform with the Herero dress, sort of putting on and taking off layers, and it's like a whole process, and kind of embodying kind of the history of that dress through performance. So this is also like another aspect of mine that I do, and I have, you know, the opportunity to kind of work in performance a little bit into next year. And then another thing that I've also been working on is a research project based off of cultural objects that were returned from the Ethnographic Museum in Berlin. And they have recently been returned, like in the last, I want to say maybe 2 years, they have been returned to Namibia. So I started working on this project with the National Museum of Namibia, and they are working with artists for the first time to sort of have some sort of public engagement, public education, I don't know what to call it yet, but just to sort of, yes, exactly, bringing in artists to kind of do that kind of work. So shortly before I came here, I went on a trip, and a project is called Artistic Research and Communal Knowledge. So it's like we want to take this knowledge out of the museum spaces and into the communities, and also engage with communities about like what is important for them. Do they want certain things to be displayed? If certain things are sacred, do they want, it should be returned? And, you know, so how do we sort of create some kind of way around thinking of restitution? Because it's not just as simple as like, you know, the thing comes from Europe, it comes back and it stays in the museum. There's so much more to that conversation. So I'm gonna continue again with that process. And yeah, and it's a great opportunity to also just go to like remote parts of Namibia that I don't usually get to go. So I'm looking forward to that. And don't you have
you had also spoke about going back to Germany in 2024.
Yes, exactly. So this is for another project that I'm working on with a South African choreographer who's based in Germany. And that project is called Reparation Nation. And so we're looking at all of these sort of different spaces within Africa and sort of asking the question of like, what does reparation look like? What does it feel like? And we're sort of working on bringing that together through performance, and that will be in September 2024 at Camp Nagel in Hamburg. So, yeah.
Okay. So do we have any questions? Does someone, yes?
I'm just curious, it's more of a technical question. When he says that he works with rubber, you know, and I'm interested, is there like a tire? Like
Rubber tubing.
Like, yes.
Yes.
You know?
The rubber, the tubing of.
Yes, I work with the tube tire of rubber, and then I collecting on the different city, and then when I collecting, I need to washing, and then after washing, I need to make some preparation, and then collecting college ish, and then you can get me one of the big space I can walk. And then the good thing for me is again the rubber is black, you know, and then black for me is like boundary, and then each incision when I cut, I think I need I'm trying to open the door to see another way, to see another place, and then each moment I scar, I build a new space. And each people, when I see before in my sculpture, I like the people feel to moving on side, to go another côté in French, yes, and then also. The things very interesting when I preparing this rubber is the time I make to drawing, scarification, and collecting different cartography and Google Map or some book, archive book from map. And then the thing is very, again, interesting is why I cancel the name. And then I'm making the anonymous map because I want the people can identify inside all people. Example, when I starting to walk, I walk to the map of Kinshasa and some place of some Paris or New York or Chicago. And then when I make in the rubber, nobody can feel these moments. I'm from to New York, I'm from to Congo. You feel just, yes, it's the map where I live, where I'm here. And then for me is one of the elements to call the people to be meeting and to connecting the people in my work. That is also the objective of my work, to erase the boundary between people and then to giving the birth a unique territory and space of my work.
Thank you.
They're tiny texts.
Oh, they're tiny texts. Okay. So, Gustavo,
All right.
There are some questions that came through on chat.
Mm-hmm. All right. iPhone says, how will both of you artists use the media of printmaking to inform your practice specifically? For me, as a painter, I use printmaking to advance my knowledge of layers.
That's a good idea. I'll take that one. Yeah, definitely. I think definitely like the sort of layers is a good one, but I think also colors and how they interact with each other. I mean, as a painter, this is always something that I was always thinking about, but I feel like it's more prominent in the practice of printmaking, you know, like a slight shift in color can really sort of bring out like something different, you know. And then, yes, absolutely. And then I think I also just like the ability to be able to like replicate something, you know. Yeah, like for me, that's very kind of interesting as far as like, because I already sort of work with this idea of layers and backgrounds anyways in my painting practice. But yeah, I'm just thinking of like having repeated elements or something like that would be kind of interesting.
Alexander?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So how will you use, this one participant asked that they use printmaking to explore layers of color in their work. How would you use printmaking in your work back home?
Okay, I think, yeah, I am making just here. Before I don't making printmaking in my practice. I think I can say when I'm back home, I can making now, but and then to take another direction where I feel free, you know. And then I think I can just say we need not to create the boundary with creativity. Yeah.
Okay, and the last question from the chat. Kim Yantis asks, I had the pleasure of visiting the workshop when you both had arrived in Philadelphia. Over the past few weeks, how have you interacted as artists during your fellowship? What did you learn from each other's practices? What did you learn from being together?
That's a big question.
How have we progressed since the first time, right? Yeah, I think because we're working with like two different master printers, one who works with woodcut and another who works with silk screening. And these processes are kind of different. Like well, not different, like they're the same, but they're different. Like there's like different things that you can do with each, right? And I think in the beginning, I was kind of struggling a little bit to like for the first print, working with the woodcut, I was kind of struggling to sort of understand how things should be layered and like what needs to happen and how, so it was just kind of hard for me to sort of know what something will look like, because sometimes I always work with like I have an image in mind and then I work to kind of create that. But here I had to kind of let the process sort of decide a little bit for me what that would be like. And it was a little bit of a struggle, but I think I'm happy with where we arrived at. And I also realized that I have to kind of make peace and just trust the process and like just let go of like control of like that image, you know? Because I come from, again, like placing things very specifically and very deliberately. And that is still there, but I think there's a little bit of like a looseness, at least with the woodcut. And the silk screen, that's a different story, but like either way, with both pieces, I'm really, really like happy, and I had to just learn to maybe just let go a little bit and just, And then, sorry, I will wrap it up, I promise. The second part of the question was, how you interacted, you two. Oh yes, how we interacted with each other. Yeah, I mean, we met in Switzerland on an artist residency there, and I had an idea of like his work. And I think, for me, I would just say it's just like that, his story, it really comes through in his work, and the idea of like scarification and how that connects people to land and to place, and that is like, if you see somebody with scarification, that in itself is a map. I think that is,
It's a connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
It also connects you to whoever your tribe is or where you come from.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I would like to let the audience know that on Monday we had a surprise visit here at Brandywine. We were honored to have Anatsui here at Brandywine on Monday, and what I think was most wonderful was the fact that this is the pilot program, and these are the individuals that were selected. And how did that feel? It felt great.
Yes, I feel good, and then also I can just say one word. I think for each artist, when you go to career of art, it's very important to meet the good person, because I think each person for me is like the door, and then this opportunity for me is one of the door I open, and then it give me more opportunity and more objective, and then also to build a new body of my work. For me, it's the door. And then I think it's, Philadelphia, it's good, and then this program also, fellowship or Anatsui is very interesting. I think I can calling also people, the young artists and from Africa, to apply if the application is starting.
Yes, the applications will be open again in November of this year. So we will be doing that shortly. But I know that we have to end our discussion. There's so much more that we could talk about. But first of all, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Also, I'd like to thank our partner this evening, Diaspora Vibe Cultural Arts Incubator in Miami, Florida, DVCAI. Thank you so much for your wonderful team. Thank you both for being here. I'm looking forward to, I've been able to go to all the visits, so, and all the little road trips. So we were going to New York on Saturday to visit some more artists. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And he will be leaving Saturday. He'll be flying out Saturday evening to go back. So I've been charged to go to the airport, so which is fine. But thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Please give them a round of applause. They've been absolutely wonderful.